I've always felt like I am a foreigner. I don't think we need that much stuff. I really don't. Learn about like Asian parenting. I'm the one having to chase them. Lots of people commenting on my weight. It's a very unique place. Nothing compared to Singapore. Everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm using a microphone today because currently the surroundings of my home is a construction site and next door there is a massive project going on and I don't want any crazy noise to interfere with this video. So we're getting mic'd up and today I wanted to have an honest and candid conversation with you guys about the reality of living overseas. If you guys are new here, hello, my name is Georgia. I was living in Singapore for 8 years and I've recently been living in Bali for the past 7-8 months now. I am British, originally from the UK, but yeah, I've spent the majority of my adult life living in Asia. So I have a lot to share with you guys today and I just wanted to kind of share good and bad things or the reality about living overseas. So yeah, before we get started, remember to like and subscribe to my channel, and if you want to follow me on Instagram you can find me at Vintage Vision. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, number one is that my way is not the only way. I think everybody is taught in life to do something in a particular way, but when you have the opportunity to live overseas, you realize that your way isn't the way that everyone else does it. You also can't go to a country thinking that your way is the right way, because most times you'll probably be proven wrong, or you'll be exposed to a whole other way of doing and living and speaking. So because of that, you have to adapt really easily to different ways of doing things. I think this is very beneficial because it exposes you to a whole other way of thinking, and also you start to think differently as well. I spent the majority of my time in Singapore thinking, oh my God, this is genius. When I moved to Singapore, I saw how, in terms of like bureaucracy and just how the country is run so smoothly, I was like, oh my God, the UK does not necessarily have its shit together and it doesn't maybe run as smoothly as it could. And there's lots of things in Singapore that made me realize that. A very silly example of that is the like car parking deduction. When you live in Singapore, you have a like EasyLink card that can be put on the dashboard of your car. So when you go in and out of car parks, it just instantly deducts the money off of that card, and that's essentially how you pay for the car park. Now, if you've been in the UK, you know that our car park system is just incredibly outdated and a pain in the bum. You basically have to go up to a counter. You have to pay for your parking ticket. You have to remember to get your parking ticket at the beginning, and then you have to remember to pay for it on the way out as well. And some parking machines, or a lot of parking machines in the UK, still only take cash, so you can only put coins in them, and it's a whole palaver. And I just thought that was always something that stood out to me. I was like, yeah, there's lots of things in the UK that could be streamlined and made more efficient, and Singapore just seemed to be there. Similarly, there was things in Singapore that made me feel like we weren't as advanced maybe as a society as we are in the UK. So yeah, it was really, really interesting to be able to reflect and kind of look at the two countries from different perspectives. And I feel like that's such a great way to teach you about critical thinking. Critical analysis is really important. I do feel like that's something that Singapore struggles with. There's a real lack of critical thinking. Obviously, moving to Bali has been a whole other ball game because it is nothing compared to Singapore in terms of advancement. I mean, it is slowly growing, but it isn't there. And so that has been a real adjustment to adjust to the way of life here and how locals do things here and how Bali's run. And it is a lot more slow paced. You have to have a lot of patience. You don't get answers as quickly as you'd like. Things aren't as efficient, but it's all a learning curve. And I'm very, very grateful for all these different kinds of experiences. Before I continue, I just want to say a quick thank you to today's sponsor, which is ExpressVPN. You guys know I have been talking about ExpressVPN for years now. It is the #1 VPN that I recommend to all of you, especially if you are an expat or you're planning to live overseas. I cannot live without a VPN. I've been using one for the past 8 years. A VPN actually encrypts your data and masks your IP address, which means that your browsing history and location is left untraceable. Very important because hackers can have access to your private information. A VPN also gives you greater freedom to access blocked content. So I catch up on my favorite shows back in the UK every single week. I wouldn't be able to do that without a VPN. So if you want to prevent yourself from being tracked online, do consider ExpressVPN. I have a link down below in the description box. You will get 3 free months with my link. Like I said, if you are living overseas, it is an absolute essential. Okay, number 2 is that having a plan isn't necessary. having a life plan isn't necessary. When I go back to the UK, everyone kind of has this preconceived notion about how life should go. You get married, you buy a house together, you have a kid, and you retire kind of thing. And I obviously started doing life very differently from around the age of 25. That's when I was 24 when I moved to Singapore. So my life already kind of took a very different direction to most of the people in my life, like friends and family back home. It just made me realize when I came to Singapore and you hear different people's stories, and like I don't think I knew anyone when I was younger, apart from some of my close relatives in Australia. But apart from that, I didn't really know anyone that had gone and lived abroad. It just shows that not everyone's life is going to pan out the same way, and it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. And kind of going with the flow and not necessarily knowing where you're going to end up is not a bad thing. So I feel like if you live abroad, you kind of understand that. Number 3 is communication. Communication in Singapore obviously was like such a learning curve for me, because although I didn't have to learn a new language because the majority of Singaporeans already speak English, which is amazing and so unique to live in an Asian country where everyone speaks English. It's a very unique place. But I did get introduced to Singlish. I have a bunch of videos on Singlish if you guys want to watch those. They are hilarious if you want to hear me embarrass myself and try to speak Singlish. But even Singlish to me was like a whole new language, and it took me a long time to get used to it. Luckily, I was really immersed into it. I joined a local company, and I was like the only foreigner in the company, so I had to quickly learn how locals communicate with each other. Something I really noticed, that political correctness wasn't necessarily a thing in Singapore compared to how it was in the UK. I was hearing lots of conversations where I was thinking, oh my God, you could never say that in the UK. And also the bluntness in Singapore. I feel like Singaporeans can be very honest. Although they're very shy and reserved, they can be very honest. And that took a while for me to get used to as well. Like lots of people just speaking their mind, lots of people commenting on my weight very often, or if I had pimples or something. And I was like, okay, normally in the UK, like you don't comment on people's weight, or you don't comment on things that might make them feel bad. But when you understand the culture, and then you learn about like Asian parenting and things like that, and then you start to understand how these things come about, I suppose. But I was also fascinated to learn why they are a certain type of way. Yeah. I was always just very curious about that. So I'd have lots of really interesting conversations with my Singaporean friends. In Bali, communication is obviously so different because I don't speak the language here. So I'm not getting to know locals on such an intimate basis as I did in Singapore, which is a real shame and something that I do acknowledge. Compared to Singapore, Balinese are just so incredibly friendly and very, very confident. I find them to be very just friendly and confident, whereas I find Singaporeans are very reserved and quite shy, and can be quite difficult to make conversation with. I think in Bali as well, there's always this over-promising and over-delivering. They like to say yes to everything. The answer is always yes, but whether they can deliver on that or not is a whole other thing. And I also find that communication in Bali, like via text, can be really, really difficult. Sometimes I feel like I'm trying so hard to give people my business, like pay them for a service, but I'm the one having to chase them, which has been really unusual actually. The communication has been kind of lacking in that regard. So that's been something I've had to reconfigure, kind of have a bit more patience when it comes to communication here. But again, really interesting to observe the differences. A quick one on loneliness. Obviously living overseas can be a very lonely process. My experience living in Singapore was that expats come and go all the time, and that means that even if you've established a really great friendship or a couple of friendships, inevitably they're probably going to leave soon. I've had friends come and go on and off for 8 years now, and although you build kind of really lovely relationships with people all over the world, it also means that you have to kind of adapt a lot quicker, and it can be sad and a bit lonely at times. Also, the fact that you are so far away from home and your family is obviously something to think about, and so I do make it a priority to see them at least once a year and spend some quality time with them. So that is obviously something that you will need to consider. On the subject of friendships, I think it's important to remember as well that it's okay to outgrow people. I know that living overseas can give you, like I said before, a whole different perspective on life, And you can feel like sometimes you've grown a lot more than the people back home because you've just had more life experiences. And I don't mean for that to sound like egotistical or like, oh, I've had more life experience than you. That's not what I mean. But because your mindset can shift so much, you can feel like people's opinions or thought processes are a little bit different to how you think now. That's what I mean to say. I think something about living in Asia is, personally, this is how I felt. I've always felt like I am a foreigner living in someone's country. And I think in Singapore, I've not spoken about this before, but I feel like that feeling is always very present. Like, even I have friends who grew up in Singapore, they went to school then, whatever, and even through all their schooling up until now, they still felt like they were treated or seen as the foreigner in Singapore. There's quite a lot of, I don't want to say foreigner bashing, but those articles seem to do really well when you talk about foreigner in a bad light, I feel like. And I do feel like it is the same kind of rhetoric here in Bali. There is a lot of anti-foreigner kind of sentiments, and a lot of the times it is for good reason, but then again I feel like it kind of like tars everyone with the same brush. Okay, another one is that you don't need so much stuff. I've noticed over the years that I don't need a lot of things, and when you are moving or you know you're not going to be in a certain place forever, you tend to refrain from buying a load of stuff. This obviously is great for the bank account, but also you realize how much stuff you use and how much you don't use, and I don't know, it just kind of gives you a different perspective on what's actually important in life, what you do need to own. I don't think we need that much stuff. I really don't, she says, as she's literally piling up her clothes to donate. And my last point is just having a deeper sense of gratitude. Like I said, you get a whole different perspective on things. I had a lot of conversations with my Singaporean friends about this and how, you know, Singaporeans tend to complain a lot about Singapore and they don't like it, and I was always like, why? Like, how can you complain? You have so much to be thankful for. And I just think it's just one of those things, you don't realize what you have until it's gone. You always think the grass is greener, but I encourage everyone to leave their home for at least 6 months and live somewhere else overseas, because the amount of personal growth that you'll experience in those 6 months will probably be unmatched. And like I said, you will return home and you'll go, oh my god, like I didn't realize how good we have it. Also start noticing things. I love going back to the UK and I notice every single detail, like even the architecture. I'm like in awe of it. I'm like, this is so beautiful. And before I used to talk badly about the UK all the time, and I know everyone talks badly about the UK now. I see it all over TikTok. I see, you know, not every country is perfect, but you have to acknowledge what is good. Otherwise, we just fall into this big trap of like being negative all the time. Yeah, I don't think that's a good mindset to have. So, okay, guys, I'm going to wrap up the video here. I do hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble. I'm actually dripping in sweat because I had to turn my fan off to film this. So I'm going to go run into the aircon. That's another perk of living in the tropics. But thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments down below. Don't forget to check out ExpressVPN. I will leave all useful links down below for you. And I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.